Hello everyone, Ember here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Arcanine, a new archetype coming out in Lost Origin. So what does Arcanine do? Well, Arcanine is a stage 1 fighting type with 130 HP that has a really impressive attack in the form of Guard Down. Guard Down requires 0 energy and deals 10 damage, but if you have no cards in your hand, it actually deals 160, which is massive for 0 energy on a 1-price Pokemon. So the big attraction for Arcanine is that it has fast turbo builds thanks to Zoroark and Peony. It has 0 energy requirement, meaning you don't have to run any copies of energy in your deck if you so choose to. It has Okos on Arceus if they're not running Dunsparce, Okos on Blissey as well if they're not running Dunsparce, Okos on Miltank I guess as well. Also just 2 kills everything else with 320. And if you're really worried about anything that has any more health than 320, then you can obviously run Choice Belt and it shouldn't hurt your consistency that much. Arcanine will also be pretty cheap, being a single prize deck. Typically have been pretty cheap in the past. And multiple variants and attackers thanks to Zoroark allow this deck to have massive versatility and allows it to be very unpredictable, especially going into events. So just taking a look at this first list, we see a very straightforward Zoroark kind of build with the 4-4 line of Arcanine and Zoroark. Then there's also a 1-2 line of Bibarel, pretty self-explanatory. Notice this person is not running Cincino. So I think the main catch with Cincino is that you never really want to discard resources unnecessarily. And having Cincino does mean that you will have to discard a card every time you want to just draw 2. And if it's 2 cards that you can't play and you've had to discard a card for it, then obviously with Bibarel ends up being a little bit better. Also, Bibarel has a wee bit more HP, so you don't get sniped as easily by Greninja. This deck also runs 1 Jolteon, 1 of a new Hisuian Zoroark, and then 1 Mightyena. So Jolteon obviously here to stop water type abilities, very powerful effect when combined with Memory Capsule. So this will obviously give you a pretty good time against Inteleon decks and Palkirs in general, which is really cool. The Mightyena, obviously here for Mew because Mew VMAX actually resists Arcanine. The Hisuian Zoroark is a really interesting card that actually says if you at the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon is knocked out. So they have to switch to remove the effect. And if you kind of just are aware that your opponent is out of switch or scoop up net options, what you can do is just try and Pokemon capture up a Pokemon that's worth like 2 or 3 prizes, i.e. a Crobat or a VMAX that has some energy on it. And then you can just use Doom News, and then potentially they just get knocked out on their falling turn. So that's a really good card in that situation. This deck is also playing a fairly heavy count of Pokemon Search because you will need to find an Arcanine every single turn. It's also playing for Pokemon Catcher, probably there for the Zoroark plays, but also in certain matchups, you'll likely be going for just trying to knock out as many 2 prizes as you can, I should say. So if you're able to try and gust up a Luminion or a Crobat, you can obviously do that, take those knockouts pretty easily, rather than having to 2-KO the 2 prize V-Stars. Also playing 3 Crushing Hammers, which I'm just a little bit skeptical, of course. Hammers are on a coin flip, but at least you can play them effectively every single turn, more or less, so it's not as if they're going to clog up your hand any. 2 Ordinary Rod, just to shuffle Arcanine back into the deck. So we can't really play Clara because we don't play any basic energy, and 2, we don't want to have supporters clogging up the hand unnecessarily, so having Ordinary Rod over Clara makes a lot of sense. 2 Choice Spell, as mentioned earlier, to allow us to hit much bigger numbers. 2 Air Balloon to switch out, 2 Memory Capsule for Jolteon. 4 Peony. Peony is kind of like a staple, I think, in the Arcanine decks because it's just going to allow you to see a lot of your deck a lot more quickly and efficiently. And Peony will obviously just allow you to discard your entire hand and search your deck for any 2 trainers that you can play out, which most instances can also lead to some Bibarel plays, as well as, just being able to find pieces for combos like Memory Capsule or a Pokemon Capture, for example. Azura is a new supported card that allows you to search your deck for 3 evolution Pokemon without a rule box. So you can use Azura on your second turn, for example, to find an Arcanine and like a Zoroark and maybe a Bibarel or something, and then use Ultra Ball to discard the Pokemon. This deck also plays a copy of Grant that allows your fighting type Pokemon to deal an extra 30 damage, and you also may discard 2 cards during your turn to retrieve Grant from the discard pile. So Grant's a pretty interesting one. It will of course allow you to discard extra cards. I can't really think that the damage output, the damage buff is terribly useful, but could be okay. This list also plays 2 capture energy, highlighting the fact that you don't actually need to earn any energy at all in Arcanine, but you can play something like capture energy if you want, because it just kind of puts you out of donk range, especially. So I think that's kind of like why capture energy could be a really nice inclusion. Moving on, we see a fairly similar build, but also not so similar in the fact that it's running a fairly different supporter and trainer count. So this Zoroark build, again, favoring my Tiana, but also using something very different in the form of Altaria. So Altaria allows you to search your deck for a supporter card and put it on the top. So you can essentially fix your top deck next turn to draw in something like a Gloria, a Peony, a Zura, a Boss, a Clara, or a Grant. And that's really cool. To be honest, this reminds me of how the original Gramble deck that did 160 if you had no cards in your hand used to play Macargo, which allowed you to search your deck for any card, admittedly, and put it on the top of your deck. So definitely some reminiscent synergy there. Also just nice to see Altaria being played because it's just a super cool card, and to see it included here is really nice. Also, because you're playing for Peony, you can get off with running a lot of like unique one-offs, I would say, such as Battle VIP Pass. So if you are going second on your first turn, you can search your deck for Battle VIP Pass using Peony. You can also use it to find Pokegear, Trekking Shoes, Escape Rope, Evolution Incense, Choice Spell, all that good stuff you can find with Peony Altaria combos. So pretty cool and unique in that build. I would say though that I do prefer the other list just because having the Jolteon capsule lock is very powerful against stuff like Palkia. But this variant is pretty cool. It is nice to see Gloria seeing some play. It allows you to search your deck for 3 Pokemon without a rule box and put them onto the bench. So you can use this to find Swablu, Zora, and Growlithe. So pretty cool in that regard. Also, this list is also actually playing the Clara. That allows you to pick up Pokemon from the discard pile. So this person obviously favors Clara over Ordinary Rod, actually, which is a little bit sketch, to be honest. I would definitely run at least one Ordinary Rod no matter what, because having all these supporters when you kind of like need to hit the 160 every turn is a little bit skeptical. I'm a little bit skeptical about that actually, but obviously this person thinks it's fine, so maybe this list is where it's at. This next list is like the most straightforward one of them all, because it's just like running at a consistent draw engine. It's not playing any fancy techs or anything. There's no Jolteon, not even playing Mightyena, so the Mew matchup is definitely going to be a lot harder for you, sorry. But this list kind of just sacrifices fancy techs in favor of a massive consistency boost, thanks to Ball Guy, which will allow you to search your deck for 3 different Pokeballs and put them into your hand. I say Pokeballs, but it's really just any kind of ball card, so you can find Quick Ball, Ultra Ball, Lever Ball, Great Ball, or even Hisuian Heavy Ball if you've actually prized one of your basics. So a really interesting build. There's also 3 Rose Tower in here, which you don't usually see stadiums in the Hisuian Arcanine decks, because obviously if your opponent has like an identical stadium to you, then you can play your stadium and you have to discard it somehow. But yeah, seeing Rose Tower is pretty cool. Not many people play it, so it's sort of like a good counter stadium to have, and also just lets you drop to 3. It is worth noting, like, you could just swap this out for, you know, Venusaur from the Pokemon Go set, or like, you know, one thing I will say actually for like all of these lists is that there's no kind of combo with the Slowbro from Pokemon Go, because you're not playing any energy essentially. So I do think it might be worth looking at maybe 1 or 2 copies of Twin Energy and like 1 copy of the Slowbro. I'd also put in a Venusaur as well, because I think Venusaur from Pokego is also like really strong. So it's allowing you to drop to 4 obviously at the end of your turn, so you can definitely like reset your hand that way and not have to rely on V-Barrel all the time. But yeah, pretty cool decks overall. And that will do it for this video. Hopefully this deck ends up being like one of the better single prize decks in the format. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of Arcanine down below. Do you think it'll be competitive or not? And hope you see you all next time. Thank you for watching.